Welcome to the Movie Pack, the podcast about film, where an old dog seeks new tricks, while a young dog learns the ways of the pack. Action!
Fantastic. Thank you very much. Well, what a wonderful welcome to this very special live recording of the Movie Pack. I'm the old dog, Clayton Jacobson.
And I'm the young dog, Chris Parlow.
And our hot dog for the evening is...
Adam Zwar.
Welcome, Adam. Big
Thank
round of
you.
applause for Adam.
Thank you.
And we've also got to give a big shout out to the St Kilda Film Festival for having us here. It is a lot of fun to have our first live experience. We'll see how it goes. Now, Adam Zwar is probably the closest we have to a Renaissance man here in the Australian film industry. I don't know if you'll agree with that.
Thanks, guys.
He's known for his work as an actor, writer, producer, voice artist, and also a director. He's one of the co-founders of Melbourne production company Highwire Films, and he's perhaps best known for co-creating and writing the TV series Wilfred Lowdown, and of course the relatively new factual series on the ABC, Agony. Agony aunts, agony uncles, the agony of life. He's
many more.
And many more, exactly. Just the unending agony.
Yeah.
So, in my opinion, Adam's possibly one of the best examples we have here in the industry of showing just how important it is to have self-initiative and self-motivation. Okay, so today we're going to be talking to him about carving out your own niche in what is a very competitive business, and we're going to be charting his journey from making his first few short films up until now when you're engaging with Hollywood. So, Adam, thank you very much for joining us.
Thanks, guys. Thanks.
Well, the first question we generally like to ask is just the simple question of what have you been working on lately?
I just got out of the edit suite for the latest Agony series. It's finished, but we kind of finished editing right up into the last minute, really, and that takes a lot out of me because it's 60 hours of footage cut down to 3 hours of television, and each interview is, when it's transcribed, is about 30,000 words, and so it's like reading a really bad novella, and just picking out the good bits. So yeah, that's been great. It always starts off with people going, "Oh, this is just like Grumpy Old Man," and it's like it's never been on before, and they attack it for why are you getting celebrities to talk about these big issues? Why don't you get experts? And really, and I don't buy into it, but I'm happy to justify it in the sense that we just get a snapshot of kind of high-profile Australians to talk about stuff that Australians are interested in, and we cut out the bad bits. It's good.
Well, it is good, and it's been very successful, and it's. I think it's great having the celebrities because, number one, you're getting people that know how to entertain.
Exactly.
So you're getting information. It's not coming across in some kind of dry, fashion. It's coming across in a way that's amusing and quite often a way that you can, relate to.
Yeah, they're professional talkers.
I
mean, there's a massive... I've been a journalist all my life, so it's a massive difference between speaking to someone who's not a professional talker and an actual professional talker. And what I found interesting is, particularly with comedians, whether they're telling a serious story or a funny story, the story will be quite structured. It'll have a beginning, middle, and an end. It'll always have a tag.
Mm.
I mean, that's just training, that's just discipline, and it really helps in the edit suite.
You've been directing all of those, haven't you?
Yeah.
Have you done a lot of direction?
No, not since my short film days.
Mm.
I don't really need to be a director. It's not a thing for me. I think there are many great directors in this country, and I don't need to throw my hat into the ring.
You don't want to be one of them.
I don't want to be one of them, no. And I'm quite passionate about, what makes a good director and what makes a bad director. I think there's a lot of kind of carpet salesmen out there, and a lot of kind of snake charmers and people who talk a good game. when it comes to direction, because it's very hard to quantify. You know, it's not like a running race. It's quite tangible in a running race. You know who's got a fast runner and who's not. But direction it's hard to tell, and sometimes people do get hoodwinked by someone who's got a good way with words. Doesn't necessarily mean they've got a good way of putting, you know, the film together. And I find that with a lot of actors too. I find that actors go on set and they say, oh, such and such was a great director, you know, we had such a good time. They say that on set. They haven't seen the finished product yet. You know, just because the director was nice to them doesn't mean he's a good director.
Yes.
You know. So I think it's I think it's interesting, and I have utmost respect for the great directors in this country. So my suggestion to anyone...
You're married to one, of course.
I'm married to one, yeah. And my suggestion is to always ask for 2 examples of their work, because you can fluke one thing, but you can't fluke 2 things.
And so in addition to the most recent Agony series, you've probably got a bunch of fiction in development, narrative stuff?
Yeah, I do. I was just saying to Clay before, because I've finished Agony and now I'm developing, and people do look at you. When you say you're developing, they do look at you like you've kind of got I don't know, that you're sick or something, that that you've fallen on hard times. You know, because it's a word people use when they're down and out developing. You know, but you have to develop. You have to spend time writing, or you have to spend time thinking, and you can't always be doing. So yeah, I'm developing at the moment. I've got a few sitcoms that I'm trying to get off the ground, and a few factuals.
Cool.
Do you enjoy development?
Yeah, I do. That's when the project's yours, isn't it?
And it's when it's every project that's in development has the potential to be the best thing ever made.
That's right.
Yeah.
And you get to be really excited about it. It's before so many circumstances come in to actually make the project great or fail. We've all been in those situations where things start with the best of intentions and have got such great promise, and just little bit by little bit they're eroded, and you end up making something that could have been something.
Well, contrary to that, you've actually been involved in a lot of very successful projects, particularly Wilfred, which of course had a long successful history, and then of course worked its way to the States. Could you maybe talk a little bit about the evolution of,
sure.
Because it started off as a short film.
St Kilda. So what happened with me was I was working as a journalist, freelance on a casual basis, and I was putting all my money that I made, because I didn't have any dependents and I was paying pretty cheap rent. So I put as much money as I could into short films, and my first short film. I just went and bought a camera, and the actors worked on weekends, and we put it together, and the actors worked over several weekends, so continuity was a problem. Cigarettes grew longer as people smoked them, and sleeves rolled up and rolled down as people walked down corridors, and in one scene a guy actually grew a moustache as he walked from the bathroom to the kitchen, And there was this guy who edited. His name was Ramo Camerotto. Do you remember him?
No, but it's a great name.
He was a film VCA graduate, and he had long black hair and one kind of blonde streak. And I remember just going into his edit suite, and someone had recommended him. And I went into the edit suite, and I said, "Hi, my name's Adam. I heard you're a great editor, looking forward to working with you." And he didn't say anything, so I just went and sat on the couch at the back of the office. And I said, "What are you using, Avid?" Or I think it was Medi 100 in those days. And again, he didn't say anything. So I just thought I'd better shut up. And 5 minutes went by, and he piped up and he said, "Had a threesome last night."
Oh, Lordy.
And so he cut it together, and after he cut it together, we used as many tricks as we could to try and zhuzh it up. But it was really dead on arrival. But he just made a pretty shit film, yeah. That's what I mean.
Oh, right. Oh,
yeah.
Man.
And but Ramo, the story of Ramo, he's now Gene Simmons' personal documentarian. So he goes around the world just filming Gene and doing stuff.
Yeah, having threesomes.
Having threesomes.
Yeah.
I'm sure there's been a bit of that. And then I made a couple of other short films, and one of which got into St Kilda. That was Break Up International. And that was the first time I'd seen a film of mine on the big screen. And that was quite a pivotal moment for me.
God bless
Paul Harris.
Paul Harris, yeah.
And he was great. Prior to that, I was a judge, by the way, and I watched 150 films, and that really taught me a lot about short films. I was obsessed by short films. I really was. And then I made Break Up, and then the following 6 months later, we made Wilfred. And Wilfred happened, it was based... I was feeling very vulnerable at the time. My mother had just died, and I'd met this girl who I really liked. Went back to her place, and she had a Labrador Dingo cross. And when we were in the lounge room, I was playing with the ball and getting on really well with the dog. Then we were time to go to the bedroom. The dog sat on the end of the bed and just looked at me as if, what the fuck are you going to do to my missus? You know? and I got freaked out and left. She didn't like me very much anyway, the girl, so it didn't really matter. And I spoke to Jason about it. Jason came around and had a drink for his birthday, and I said, we always improvise stuff. I said, you be the dog and I'll be me. And that's how it started. And we just wrote it, and we had a feeling that night. It was one of the few times in life where you get that feeling where you feel that you've actually done something that could be exciting.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, so for all the people in the audience and people listening, they're interested in making short films and eventually moving on to television like yourself or features. So once you kind of hit on that spark, we've got something here. How did you go on and turn that into the TV show we know and love?
Okay, well, yeah, so...
Because it was about 5 years later, wasn't it?
I raised $4,000, made the short film. We went around, tried to... After that, we had a bunch of meetings, because Trot Fest allows you to get a bunch of meetings, introduces you to a lot of people. And Jason Gann, I'm talking about, Jason and I had a feature script called Rats and Cats. And that got a little bit of interest, and that looked like it was going to happen, and then it stalled. In the meantime, a guy called Chris Merkshire, who's who's turned into one of Australia's great television screenwriters. He wrote Underbelly, The Slap, the one about the asbestos thing. You know, he's written a bunch of stuff, and he had a sitcom at the time, and he asked Jason and I to write on it, and we wrote on it, and it was a great experience. And Chris was a gun when it came to actually setting out pitch documents and Bibles. They're really important in television. And so that was my little university, just learning off him. And I went, okay, I reckon this Wilfred idea is open-ended enough. It could be a TV show. We'd made a lot of money. We got a lot of prizes in kind, like editing and film stock and everything. And so we decided to throw that in to actually extending the 7-minute short film into a 25-minute television pilot, which we did. We sent it around with a bunch of outlines for other episodes. No interest at all. Then Comedy Channel said, look, we might be interested, but we need to see the scripts. As Jason and I are writing the scripts for free, Comedy Channel wrote and said, by the way, we're not interested anymore. Man. And then once we'd finished the scripts, took it back to SBS, and Miranda D and Debbie Lee, who were the executives there at the time, said, actually, this does have merit. We were wrong. We thought it was a closed idea, but it actually is a TV series. And
what do you think tipped them over? What do you think?
I think that they just didn't see that this could be a TV series.
Well, it's an absurdist idea.
Yeah.
It takes a certain leap of faith.
That's true.
But the evidence was there in the shorts. So,
well, yeah. I mean, creative people think differently to Suits. So I agree with you, but you've been in the room, you've tried to sell things before,
yeah.
and people that they just don't, they didn't see it. So,
but I think it's actually an interesting thing that you went back, and I think maybe that's a really great thing for listeners to be aware of. Is that a lot of these institutions and places where you're going to sort of hawk your wares and sell your product, they do personnel change very quickly, and attitudes change, and the mandates of those companies change, and so it's great that you went back, because I probably wouldn't have. So I think there's a good lesson in that. Go back.
They were good executives.
Right.
Debbie Lee and Miranda Deere, great executives. I think Miranda had left by the time we actually started having meetings, so it was all Debbie. She really championed the project, said, go as far as you want to go. It was quite utopian in those early days, and I've never experienced anything like that from TV executives since. And so we got to make the show we wanted to make. The first series of Wilfred, I watch and I go, okay, well, thank you, SBS. You gave me a chance to fail on television. You get the psychic whip when you're watching your show on television. You for some reason, you kind of things that weren't apparent in the edit suite, flaws that weren't apparent in the edit suite, are suddenly just writ large when you're watching it on television. So I looked at that. But
it was successful. I mean, it did. It found an audience, and
it did. Yeah, and I think sometimes the spirit of the piece kind of overrode some of the mistakes. So I think when I look at the second series, I think it's a more accomplished work. But in the meantime, as that's happening, Jason and I did 52 episodes of sketch comedy on The Wedge, and we made a feature called Rats and Cats, and that was one of those things that was death by a thousand cuts, Rats and Cats. When people come up to me and they say they love the film, I want to give them a hug, and because I know that they've seen the film it could have been. So so this is all in this space of 4 or 5 years, a massive education for me in making film and TV.
And at what point did you form Highwire Pictures?
So we made the pilot for Lowdown with the Film Victoria pilot scheme. It's no longer in existence, but it was a great initiative. And we sent it around, and SBS and ABC were both interested and ended up going with ABC. And that's, at the time, I'd worked for a bunch of other production companies, and so Nicole and Amanda, and we wanted to have equity in our own work. And that's how, so Lowdown was the reason why we filmed Highwire Films, and why we formed Highwire Films. And also around that time, Nicole Minchin, Highwire Films is Amanda Brocci, Nicole Minchin and me. And Nicole Minchin also had 20-something with Jess Harris. So those Lowdown and 20-something were kind of going at once.
The thing that I find interesting about both of those shows, Wilfred and Lowdown, and it seems to be fairly rare in this country, except for the likes of maybe shows like Jack Irish, is it was a singular director for the entire series. The Wilfred was Tony Rogers, did a fabulous job, and of course Amanda doing Lowdown. Yeah. And as we know, we've seen the fruits of that kind of thinking with shows like True Detective. It's a singular vision going right through. Did that feel different? Having one. Maybe talk about that process, because I think it is a really great thing having one director go right through the whole.
It is. It is. Wilfred, obviously, Tony and I had a great partnership putting that together, because Tony is a very visual person, and I came with the storytelling, and obviously Jason is a comic master. So it was a real trio putting that show together. It felt like it's like a band. Lowdown creatively was Amanda. Amanda really took the directorial reins on that. There's no doubt about it. It was she just brought a wonderful lightness of touch, I think, to the whole series, and it's so effortless the way it's put together. And I kind of compare it to, you know, an umpire of an AFL game. You know the umpire's doing well when you don't notice the umpire. You know, there's none of that kind of posturing and ego that sometimes goes into
She's a
directing.
great, very strong, clear idea, but very gentle. I was lucky enough to
Yeah,
have
you
been
were-
cast in the first step of the second
You were
series.
fantastic. Yeah,
And,
yeah.
It was a wonderful day. But is it hard being married to the director of your own? Like, you can't go home at night and say, Jesus Christ, you're not going to believe what she had me doing. Like, did you role play and go home and pretend to be talking about?
What we did, we were pretty much on the same page by the time we went into production. We had a good rehearsal process, so we ironed out any, those moments, because we wrote the scripts together, and you go, well, what I meant when I said this was this, or how can you not see that? You know, and she said, well, you know, and the other person might say, well, it's funny if you do this. We really nutted all that out. So there was no arguments left to have by the time the cameras rolled. But you know, she did put a ban on me at one stage from talking about it. I think I wasn't allowed to talk about the show after 9 p.m. And definitely not in the bedroom.
And so by this stage, you're kind of already living the dream that most young filmmakers would have, but it goes beyond this. Like, Wilfred was turned into a TV show in the US, and I believe Lowdown is currently in development in the US.
It is. Yeah. Living the dream. I mean, Wilfred was very, even in the US, was a shoestring budget. So
really?
Not a hell of a lot of money there. No.
Didn't look like it.
No, right. Yeah, comparatively, I guess. So obviously more money than Australia, but yeah, single cam, pretty low budget. So none of us were buying houses or anything with the proceeds. And also the deal was it was split so many ways. The money was split so many ways, and Film Victoria and Screen Australia and SBS are all major investors, so they need to get paid first before the creatives got paid. And it's still the case. So that's there. It's an interesting thing having your show formatted, because it's like you're married to someone and you have a child, and then your spouse leaves with that child and goes to the US and maybe is brought up by another man. And so, you know, that's the analogy. You're going, you're thinking, they're learning other things. They're behaving in another way. And my misgivings, I loved the show. I thought Jason was amazing, and I thought he rose to greater heights in the US version of Wilfred as an actor than I'd ever seen him before, and I'd seen everything he's done. I thought he was just fantastic. I felt that in their great attempt to be deep, that they explained the fundamental joke, and they explained why that the protagonist saw him as the dog, and I think that's the fundamental enemy of comedy.
They're very, very big on explaining.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. So once you explain, then I think you're just losing a lot of the humour, and you know, I didn't say anything for years, and I ended up having a very open and frank email exchange with the guy who developed it in the US only probably a few months ago, and where he was pretty much saying that my vision of the piece was intellectually light, and
Oh, wow.
and that he was some kind of philosopher. I feel like saying, did you study philosophy at university? Are you actually a philosopher? No, I just think you're like me. You're just a joke writer. But anyway,
Wow.
Well, it was great that Jace did get to go to the heights that he did, because I remember I acted alongside him in a short years ago called Buried, and I remember the first day I turned up, he was saying to me, he said, "Oh, I know, I'm always just going to get cast as a bum or a druggie, But I'm going to make sure every bum and druggie I do is totally fucking different. And
I mean, he's one of the great actors, and for whatever reason,
he's our Mickey Rourke.
he is. Yeah, I mean, he is our Mickey Rourke. That's right, and I think that he's probably lost his passion for acting for whatever reason, and these days he lives his life as a writer, but I think it's a massive loss to acting.
Yeah. Well, look, even though there may be some misgivings for what happens when the baby gets shipped out of home, it is a wonderful thing that it has been picked up, and it's something that everyone hopes would happen to them. But it's a mystery to many of us as to how that actually happens. So, what was in a brief sort of way, what was the machinations that got it from the Australian screen into the US? Was it something that you approached, or was it something that you guys actively...
It's a funny thing, the amount of people who take credit for it, that you put on a 747 plane, it's like, I was there when such and such talked to such and such.
Well, I tell people that it was my idea.
Yeah, that's yeah, right.
Yeah.
Look, it was given to ICM, which is an agency in the States, and they shipped it out to various showrunners, and who took it to FX. Oh. And so it was as simple as that. We just got an agent. I think.
So your agent?
No, it was Renegade's agent. With Renegade produced Wilfred. It was their agent. They they put it together. Mm-hmm. And off they went and sold it. I can speak. I was kind of very much in the process for Lowdown going to the States, and it was a case of ICM, who represents Amanda and Nicole, and CAA, who represents me, coming together and taking it out to a producer. Producer came on board. And a producer who we got on really well with, they're called Hypnotic. They produce Suits and Covert Affairs, and we took it around to studios. And sold it to a studio, and then what happens is then you have to go to various networks and try and sell it. And we had 15 networks that we were pitching to over, say, a 3-day period, and before we started pitching, Amanda and I arrived in LA, and we had a Skype call with the producers, and they said, "Okay, how are you going to pitch it?" And so we did our pitch, which we had actually practiced, and they said, "No, that's not going to work." and so they said, "This is what it's got to be. It's got to be more personal. You got to say why this project has to be made and why it's so idiosyncratic." And so basically we put together what is essentially a 7.5-minute show.
But so they don't actually watch the pre-existing eps?
No, well, what happens is you either go in, it's all tactics. So, I know with the Moody Christmas Boys, they had the episode everyone had already watched the episode. And so when they walked into the room, there was a vibe going. With us, they decided that it'd be great if they met us and then watched the episode. Don't know what the rationale was. So we had to go in there and cold pitch the show. And that was all about, started off with me and my time in journalism and some of the stories that are gone on, and I talked about working at a place called the Brisbane Sun, where you walked into the office, there was a poster on the wall that said, "Welcome to Sun Country, make it fast, make it first, make it accurate." And someone had written underneath, "And if all else fails, just make it up," So I talked about, I talked about all those kind of newspaper tropes. And then Amanda would come in and talk about the characters and why they were kind of remarkable. And then we talked about the tone of the show. And we pitched it half hour as a half hour to all of the networks, and you're told when you're pitching to CBS that they don't laugh. Okay, so you're pitching it to USA, you're pitching to NBC, Fox. Laughter, it's a great feeling in the room. It's amazing. CBS don't laugh. That's their thing, and it's like you sit there on couches, and there's it's a panel of about 10 or 12 suits, and they're all just sitting down with clipboards writing. Kind of, it's like you're trying to get into the Royal Academy of Dramatic Art or something, and but you hold your own water because you've been told that they don't laugh. But anyway, the best there were a few places interested, but the best place was E, and they wanted it as a 1 hour. And so we've been developing as a 1 hour. And that's a massive change from a sitcom.
And so I've heard that pitching in the US is quite different from pitching in Australia. Is that what you found compared to talking to SBS and the ABC here?
I think we're getting more like the US. I think there's a massive push for the showrunner model in Australia, and I think they're realising that's a good thing. And so, you have to just basically make a compelling argument as to why this show should be made.
Can be just as brutal as what you... I mean, I went into a meeting at... I won't mention names. And but the person that I was pitching to came in with a mug, and on the mug it read, "I may look interested, but I'm not."
Oh, God,
and,
wow.
I went, okay, well, that's gonna, I've just put 3 weeks' work into this pitch, so we'll see how we go. Let's get it up on its feet and see how we go.
Do you think is that a deliberate tactic?
Well, I think so, but it actually did work. I mean, I actually laughed internally, it freed me up a little bit, but I don't think there was anything particularly funny about it. But no, they can be very... very trying. But pitching to the Yanks is a lot of fun because on the whole, they always make you feel so welcome because they just don't know what you're bringing in. They don't know whether you've got gold in your pockets.
Yeah.
And so, tell me, you got
you get the water or you get the coffee. Is it water or coffee?
They call it the bottle run, don't they?
Yeah.
Did you had Jeffrey Rush, of course, in doing the voiceover in Lowdown. I remember at the time that being quite a coup. How did that come about?
I wrote jokes for him for the AFI Awards from 2006 on, and 2006, 2007, and we became friends. I remember on the first day I walked into his house and I was greeted at the door by his wife, Jane, who's a great actress, lovely lady, and she just looked at me and she said, "Don't be scared of him." And I went, "I'm not going to be scared of him." And, I was actually terrified. And he said, come out onto the... Oh, no, that's right. She said, "Jeffrey, the dog has killed a possum in the backyard. Would you mind burying it?" Yeah, sure. And we went outside and he went under the house and he brought out a shovel, which was just beautiful. It was shiny, new, and had the label still on it. And he had it leaning up against him as he rolled a cigarette and told theatrical anecdotes. And he smoked the cigarette and he started rolling another one and continued telling stories. And I said, "Jeffrey, do you want me to bury the possum?" And he said, "If you would."
Oh, that's great. That's good. Maybe that's a little kind of test that his wife...
Yeah. Put a dead possum in the backyard.
It's the same possum. They've been burying it over and over again. She digs it up. He won't bury the possum. He's out of here.
That's it. Yeah, that's right.
It's like sort of, jumping the shark. Should be called burying the possum.
Yeah.
It just didn't quite make it.
No, I wasn't willing to bury the possum.
Well, you did. You've done. I mean, you've done a lot of writing, but you've also done a lot of acting. And I don't know if anyone in here would notice, but your voice is very familiar to many of us because of you've done a lot of voiceovers in the past.
Yeah.
Ads. Ads said a voice from the back. Yes.
A lot of ads.
Yeah, a lot of ads. But so tell me, so when you write, are you writing as a writer or are you writing as an actor? Are you inhabiting? How do you sort of approach writing?
It's I write from the position now. I write like what's going to cut through. You've always just got to think: is this a compelling enough story? You've also got to think about in terms of whether this will go for 100 episodes. You can't write a series that goes for 6 or 8 episodes and that's it. Not half hour anyway. Obviously, you've got your True Detectives, but half hour. You need to have a journey that can just go on, and characters that will just be interesting enough to go on and on. So I do think conceptually straight away. I do try and make it contained. I'm not one for big budgets and lots of locations. But for me, it's the characters. The characters are the big thing for me, and sure, I do think of myself always playing the protagonist. That's just that just gets me through the writing process. I'm not really attached to it. In fact, with Lowdown, one of the first things they said to me, we sat down in the room and had the network and the studio and the production company, and they were all saying how great it was. You know, it was a phone call, and how excited everyone was. And then there was a long pause, and they went, Adam, we don't want you to play Alex Birchall. And I went, no, that's fine. He goes, you're just too old. Oh, just too old. So, you know, and I'm totally fine with that. I'm lucky I've got the acting bug out of my system. If someone wants me to act in something and I happen to like the script and the director, I'll do it. But it's not something that I absolutely need to do anymore.
And so, like, hearing you talk about it and seeing your work, it's clear that you're a storyteller. You're creating new shows all the time. Is that how it started, or did you start as a performer primarily?
Look, this was all to get my acting career going. It's just a big joke, you know, that I've ended up a writer and a producer, because I created Wilfred, the short film. All the short films were to get me noticed by the powers that be and to try and get more work for myself. But what it ended up doing was something completely different, and that is it ended up making me a writer, a producer. And for a few years I was really fighting it and going, no, I'm an actor. I want to be an actor. Can't you see the talent on the screen? And but no one did. So They really liked my writing. It was a tragedy, man.
And is this something
when it comes out of your mouth, though, too? When the stuff that you did actually get to star in Lowdown. So
I forced myself on these situations. But Australia doesn't necessarily want to see me on the screen. They're happy to see my words come out of the mouth of, I don't know, Roger Corser.
And is this something you'd recommend for, like, the young filmmakers out there? I mean, out of film school, some people can have this attitude of like, oh, I'm just going to graduate and someone's going to watch my film and they're going to rescue me and I'm going to be famous and making these things. Like, it seems like you've been generating your own work all the time.
There's a class system in the Australian film and television industry. There are people who are looked after by the industry, who are connected with a network or a production or a big production company, and they're going to be fine, all right? For the rest of their lives. They've got jobs for lives. And then there are the self-made people, the kind of cowboys who... Because the Australian film and television industry is a little bit like the Wild West. It really is a miracle if you get something up. And generally it's force of personality that gets things up, and it's just this massive drive. I spent time with Clay during his Kenny days, and, you know, he looked terrible. He looked absolutely terrible, but it was just this drive to just make this thing happen. And I remember that famous quote when you were on your third editor, I think, Clay, and you said, mate, don't think that I directed this. Just think that some dickhead is giving you a batch of footage and you now have to fix it. So you're willing to do all those things. You know,
it is actually the thing I say on everything I ever edit. If I'm editing with another editor, I always say, okay, forget that I directed it. Let's just assume he was an idiot and just try and make some sense out of this shit. Because it frees them up. But I wasn't the strapping picture of a man I am today.
You're just like pasty and sweaty and always thinking about something else. But there are self-made people. You see it all the way. You know, there are these kind of cowboys that just... And cowboys and cowgirls that just like will themselves a career, and I think I fit into that category. I just never gave up and kept on making stuff, and you just slowly improve. You realise when I first started that how hard it is to make a shit film. you have to work really hard, to make a shit film, and then you learn. What I mean by that is you work your ass off and it's still terrible. So you don't realise the learning curve that you're on when you start making stuff, and then eventually you become okay. And then once you become okay, you're going to go through these ups and downs. And honestly, sometimes you go into you're pitching something. Or you're going for funding, and everyone in the room just loves you, and they want to make your stuff. They'll buy anything that you want, and then then that lasts for a little while, and then for no reason you'll suddenly be radioactive, okay, and you can't get anything up, and everyone hates you, and I've seen the most successful people who you think would be untouchable, but I've seen them go through those peaks and troughs, and that's something that you have to kind of live with as well.
Well, there's probably several hundred people reaching for razor blades now as they're listening to this. But I think it's fair to say they're fair to say that you are your own harshest critic.
Yeah.
And it is tough. It is, and I think the thing to get out of this is, one of the key things I think for being an artist, more now than ever, is persistence and resilience. And of course, if you've got talent, great. But it really is about just pushing through that barrier. All the things that you're saying are true and accurate.
But it's 20% talent. The rest is persistence and being someone that people want to work with.
Mm. So what about features? I mean, have you got any interest in going into doing features, or is that sort of? I mean, television is really going through such a renaissance at the moment. I mean, it's almost like why would you even do that?
Well, yeah.
Do you have an interest?
It's a writer's medium, television. Amanda and I have written a feature script, and we had a reading a few months ago with Paddy Bramwell and Sarah Snook, and it went really well, but we're on that long road of trying to get it up, and raising finance in this country without a massive star is hard. And
it'd be great when they can actually record our dreams, because we won't need to do all these pitches. We can just sort of plug them all in and go, see, that's what I saw. That's what I saw. And they go, oh yeah,
that's right. You really need to.
Yeah.
I mean, if I am going to give some advice, don't overestimate what they're saying, what the people that what they're seeing, what the people that you're selling to are actually seeing when you're pitching an idea, because everyone creates these things in their own head. So it's great to have a sizzle reel or a mood reel or a couple of scenes already done, just so they can see it, because that suddenly then the conversation you'll find the conversation goes to a higher level, and the interest is more concrete.
I mean, do you credit Wilfred getting up to that, but going out and doing the short and then doing the pilot?
Yeah, totally. Without Wilfred and without that, I wanted to give up many times. After every short film I made, I wanted to give up, because I just felt like I'd failed miserably. And finally, there was breakup. There was a little bit of a kind of break in the clouds with Breakup International, and then Wilfred really took everything to a new level. And I worked very hard to try and get that up, and it cost me a lot of money. And
but it was worth it.
It worked out in the end. Yeah.
Cool. Well, we're going to be passing it over to the audience in a few minutes. We just got a couple of quick questions. Each episode, we ask for a recommendation. Have you been watching anything good recently?
I reckon if you get a chance to watch a documentary called Seduced and Abandoned, I'm not saying it's a brilliant piece of cinema, but it stars Alec Baldwin and James Tobin, and they go to Cannes to try and get money for a film. It's the follow-up to Last Tango in Paris. It's a sequel to Last Tango in Paris. They want to make that. Is that sequel? Oh yeah, right. It is. If you want to learn about the film industry and you want to learn about Cannes particularly and pitching in Cannes, I highly recommend it. And, you know, it's a fascinating insight into the difference between a TV star and a film star. And now because Alec Baldwin is seen as a TV star, suddenly he's struggling to get things up in Cannes. And he's a guy that's not used to hearing the word no. So it's a very interesting piece of cinema. Cool. Not great, but interesting.
Clay, what about you?
I think the documentary is just called Harry Dean Stanton, but I watched a doco on Harry last night, which, I mean, he's just one of those great actors that have been in so many seminal films that I...
What was that on?
It was on iTunes. But it was, again, I don't know if it was a great cinema. It was fascinating to watch, but it became very apparent that he's not keen to talk about himself or reveal much of the mystery.
Unlike me.
Unlike you. So I have a sneaking suspicion that every time he was asked a question, he would pose the question back. I could answer that or I could sing you a song. And so the documentary is just riddled with him singing songs.
That's great.
Like in bars and like every time they sat down to interview him, he just started singing.
Yeah.
And so you don't learn much. But what's interesting is the man's face is a canvas and there's a life there. It's the very reason why he is so magnetic, is you can just stare at him for the full length of this doco, and I wasn't bored. And not only that, they showed some fantastic clips from Paris, Texas, which was just one of those, you know, just any chance I get to just hear the words, I knew these two people, you know, it's a wonderful scene.
It is.
And a wonderful film about... you know, and also he does talk a little bit about, the only thing he does open up about is about not talking in that film, which I thought was quite interesting.
But don't you find it interesting that some actors have just born with this inner world that you see through their eyes and, you know, you go, what is that person thinking? And often it's nothing.
Well, no, it's true. It's actually it's true. It's I always remember, and we did this experiment in Kenny. I remember reading about you know, Casablanca and the final scene where, you know, and Bogart was always asked, you know, what was going through your mind in that close-up? And he said, I was just told to stare at a dot on a wall. And he said, it's what I did. And you know, he said if the filmmaking if they had done their job prior to that, then the audience fills in the gaps. And so we did do that. We tried that as an experiment, Kenny, and it worked. I said, look, just stare out. It was at a certain point of the film where I said, you know, it'd be interesting to see if this gets any kind of reaction. I did shoot one where I did get him to actually emote, but the one we ended up using was where he's just staring off at this spot and thinking about football. I think he was just, but yeah, everything that had gone before.
Those Bulldogs.
Yeah, but it is.
What is he? What's Shane?
Shane's he's a first grade.
Yeah.
And what about you? What have you seen?
So this might be my favourite discovery of the last year. I'm a little late to the party, but I'm going to say Danger 5. Which has 2 seasons. It's produced in Adelaide, although you wouldn't know it just from looking at it.
What are you trying to say? There goes our Adelaide audience.
No. It's got an international flavour and it's got a vintage feel, and so very unusual. The first season, it's like a World War II kind of, I don't know what to describe it as, but as if it was made in the 60s. And then, just so bizarre, like one episode, Hitler has a dinosaur army, there's robots, whatever you could possibly hope for. And if that wasn't good enough, in the second season, it's like post-World War II, but set in the 80s, and they just pretty much mine every 80s film trope ever. There's like the high school movie, just action and blood everywhere, like poltergeist stuff. It's just insanity. It's really good. It's really good.
Great.
Yeah. So we've got...
It's fantastic.
Yeah?
I want to recommend it.
Cool. Well, we've got one important question before we throw it over. Clay, you want to do the honours?
Yeah. Look, if you could be any dog in the world, what would that dog be?
It'd be a beagle.
Oh, beagle, really?
A beagle.
God,
I just love those dogs. I'm a Snoopy fan. So, Peanuts fan. So yeah, I've always loved beagles.
Do you own a beagle?
No, I own cats. I love cats as well, and I'd come back as a Burmese cat if I could.
Well, I own a beagle.
Do you?
Yeah.
Hard work, high maintenance.
Oh yeah. I mean, they are just governed by their nose. Everything is just the nose thinks for every other part of it, and it's just.
Can you imagine how powerful it is?
Oh.
Do you ever try and think about it with the beagle going, what are you smelling? What are you, or more to the point, what are you hearing as well?
Well, I think that's why they have those big those big flappy ears.
To
They kind of
protect them.
act like blinkers for the nose. So the nose only sort of zeroes in what's ever in front of it, which is normally meat of some description. Many of our barbecues have been ruined by our beagle. It's just, you just 1 minute there's food enough for everyone and the neighbours. Next minute there's just a very fat beagle and a lot of miserable, guests.
But that it's just like it's this constant panic. Whether am I going to get fed? Where's my next meal coming from?
That's it. Well, I can see the correlation there. That is filmmaking, isn't it? Where's the next meal coming?
It is,
and there's never enough.
and sniffing out a lot of things.
Alrighty, well, before they kick us out of here, Luke, would you do the honours of passing the mic around? Does anyone have any questions for Adam?
You've all got to ask a question.
So, charitably, Adam, I'm assuming you've never actually met a Kelpie because it's un-Australian not to go for Kelpie.
Yeah, I love Kelpies too.
So the woman in Wilbur, we love your work. We don't like American Wilbur. But it was a bit smutty. But the woman, she likes the dog more than you.
Yeah.
Is that how it always is? And it's a comedy question really, is it advisable for a man, trying to do well, to bring a dog into the relationship? Will that help sort of give her a focus?
It depends what you want out of the relationship. But she does like the dog more than me, and that's funny. It's actually it's a psychological war going on between the dog and me, and I've read a lot of stuff written about it. People analysing it. Some people say it's a class war, and that's got merit. But yeah, would I advise bringing a dog into a relationship? The problems arise if the dog's already there. The dog's already got a relationship with the woman, and then you come into it. I don't think you're ever going to win.
Can I say that if you turned up with a stray dog on a first date, I reckon you're getting a pretty good chance there.
That's right.
They're going to love that.
It's a level playing field too.
Yeah, exactly. And also, quite often dogs, I often see people being brought together by a dog in public.
Yeah.
It's like,
It's great.
It's a good icebreaker, I think.
That's right. There's a lot of good. There's a lot of evil too.
Cool. And anybody else?
Just at the front here.
Yeah, I believe you learn the most from your mistakes.
Yeah.
Can you name a few that you
Mistakes?
made? Yeah. Maybe the one I'm interested in, mistakes you make pitching an idea.
Look, there's a couple of scripts I've sent out too early. I think that's a major mistake. Make sure you send out your scripts when they are thoroughly blooded, and you need to have good people around you to give you advice. Don't just randomly select people to give you advice. The people that you get advice from are people you trust and have wisdom within them, and give good notes. So don't send out scripts too early. My other big thing would be to make sure that you work with the right people. Choose your collaborators wisely. It's like a relationship, but more so. So you just need to make sure that those people, and they need to be. Say you're making comedy, so they need to be comedically in line with you. They probably need to be smarter than you. They need to have easygoing tempers. They need to be good in a crisis, and they need to be good in the room. And by room, I mean the writer's room. They can't be dickheads, They need to be good in the room when it comes to pitching. They need to be they just need to be kind of people that you're going to battle with. And so if someone comes up short in those things, you got to cut it off early. You just don't do it to yourself.
But I think also with my experience with pitching is the first 2 minutes are really important. You know, you don't want to just get in there and just nervously start, pitching. It's about, I always found it was great to I always tried to find something to talk about that might be a little bit funny or sort of interesting about what I just experienced on the way in or something like that. Just to break the ice and get a sense, and it just kind of calms things down a little bit. And then when you go into the pitch, I think for me pitching has always been about, it's a bit like telling a joke. You don't give too much detail. A pitch should feel a little bit like what it's like when a great mate tells you they've just seen a great film. I mean, it's got to be a tease too. You don't want to.
Yeah, you want to have practiced it. I wouldn't go into a pitch untested with untested material. You got to have told someone. It's got to be sharp. It's got to be bouncy and ready to go. It's got to have a punchline.
I went around LA with a project a couple of years ago with the director writer, and we were sort of co-directing. We were trying to get an animated film up, and yeah, we must have rehearsed the pitch. We drove all the way from San Francisco to LA, and we rehearsed it at least 100 times on the way. And we tried doing it in funny voices. We do it really flat, like we try and.
That's funny.
We did it to sort of to
like
entertain ourselves. Just as different characters, and then we'd swap roles, and then we'd talk about how long we wanted the pitch to be, and we just kept. And it got to a point where we were so familiar with it that when we were actually pitching the thing, the mouth was just kind of moving, and you were going with it, and it wasn't a tense. And what was also lovely about it is that you get into a rhythm if you're sharing a pitch with another person, if you've got another writer, or if it's not just yourself, you get into that rhythm where you're familiar with when the other person's going to take over, and you kind of get in this great.
That's why Amanda and I with Lowdown, we could have taken that show on the road. I reckon it was ready to go. And then you start adding stuff because you've got a great platform. You can then add stuff to it, and sometimes you find funnier stuff in the new material, but you've got that kind of base, so you're never going to fail.
Who's next?
Just when you're writing, how do you know when to walk away from a final draft? Do you usually get input from your collaborators? Is that how you sort of know? Because I know you can sort of...
Yeah, well, I've got Amanda generally who looks at my stuff and she tells me. She says, yeah, I reckon that's ready. I think I have a good idea. I couldn't tell you tangibly what it is, but it's definitely a feeling, and you have written about 4 or 5 drafts, and it has... the material is tested. Things just click into order. It's like a jigsaw puzzle. It just clicks into order, and then you have you walk into the world of network notes, and that's a whole different conversation.
We've probably got time for one more, Sophie.
I just wanted to know who your favourite person to interview is from the Agony series.
Look, I love them all. People I particularly look forward to are Judith Lucy, Lawrence Mooney, Sam Pang, Dave O'Neill, Andrew Knight. But then I get surprised. Jane Currow just kind of blew me out of the water. Yeah. She really she was quite incredible, and but Mooney's. I remember when I first started the series, and Mooney sat down on the first day, and he said he had the questions and he had some of these answers written down. And he said, I'm going to. Something like I'm going to knock this out of the park, and there's basically he was ready as like a prize fighter, ready to kind of go into the ring, and a few months later we're doing Agony Aunts, and I said, yeah, when Mooney, speaking to Judith Lucy just sat down, and I said, yeah, I was speaking to Lawrence, and he said he's going to knock this out of the park. That's what the first thing he said to me. And she was just stony-faced, and she said, Lawrence Mooney, bring it on. And I just knew we've got a show here, we've got a series. This is going to go on for a while. And yeah, comedy is like fighting. You know, that's why comedians say if they do well, they say they killed. And if they do badly, they say they died. It's a war out there.
Awesome. Well, we'd love to keep talking to you, but unfortunately we've got to wrap it up.
Thanks, guys.
Adam, thank you so much. Can we have a round of applause for him, please?
Thanks a lot.
And we also have some special thank yous today. Of course, a big thank you to St Kilda Film Festival for having us here and supporting short films in general. They're an institution here in the local film industry. We want to thank our regular Movie Pack crew. These are the people behind the scenes bringing these episodes and keeping Clay and I sane behind the scenes. So a big thank you to Ben Douthwaite, who's our editor up the back, Luke Clark, co-producer, and Maya Tarrell, editorial advisor. We also have three handsome young gentlemen who are operating cameras here today. So a big thank you to Scott Pope, Ben Billette, and Ryan Bolt. Thank you all, guys. Round of applause, please.
Thanks, guys.
And that's about it.
That's it for the show. Thank you so much. I'm the old dog Clayton Jacobson.
I'm the young dog Chris Parlow.
And our hot dog for the night,
Adam Zwar.
Good on you, Adam.
I'm getting used to that.
Yeah.
Hot dog.
Thank you so much. Thanks everyone for coming along. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.
You've been listening to The Movie Pack. This episode was produced by Chris Paulo and Luke Clark. Edited by Ben Douthwaite. Maya Tarrell is our editorial advisor. Theme music by AOA. Artwork by Peter Thomas. Subscribe to us on iTunes. And if you enjoyed the show, please give us a rating or review. It makes a big difference to us. Find us on Twitter at The Movie Pack. And you can find show notes and other goodies at themoviepack.com.